Ice towers. They exist. Ice towers are a staple of the tower defense genre, and like any staple, like the fast-firing tower or the long-range high-damage tower, most TD games on Roblox have their very own take on how an ice tower would work. The idea for ice towers is honestly pretty cool, pun intended. Freezing enemies on the path in order to stall them so that your damage-oriented towers can rack up, well, damage. In concept, it's a pretty powerful and useful tool that can save you many games. However, in practice, this isn't always the case. Ice towers on Roblox tower defense games are notorious for being absolutely god-awful. They're slow, they do no damage, they don't freeze for very long, they're very, very expensive for the very little you get out of it, and they're just bad. For a long time on Roblox, games like Tower Battles and Tower Defense Simulator did their ice towers dirty by having them be super ineffective and completely useless. However, in recent times, these games have gotten their acts together and have given ice towers some more love, care, and focus. Games like Tower Blitz and TDS have introduced reworks to their freezer towers, giving them unique methods of attack and actual viability as stalling towers. Where others, like Tower Battles and World Tower Defense, have introduced new freezing units that are absolutely just look at this dude. This is just OP. It's taken a while for us to get here, but ice towers are slowly getting to be actually good. But that got me thinking, which tower defense games, of the many on Roblox, have the best ice towers? Which TD games treat their freezing units with the most respect? Well, in this video, I hope to answer that. So without further ado, be sure to like and subscribe, and let's jump into it. So before we begin, let's lay down some rules that I set for myself here. For one, I didn't rank every freezer in every TD game on Roblox. There's just too many. I just am ranking all the ones that I've played before. The games featured in this video are the following: Tower Battles, Tower Defense Simulator, Tower Blitz, Tower Defense X, World Tower Defense, Doomspire Defense, and Tower Galactica. Yeah, surprisingly, at least from what I could see, there's no freezing unit in Tower Heroes. Maybe there is and I'm just a really stupid person, and that's very well a possibility, but I didn't see one, nor do I own one. So this leads to my second rule. I own most of the towers on this list, but not all of them. For the ones I don't own, I asked some of my friends how good they are, looked at some videos, and made my judgments accordingly. Sorry, I don't own everything. If I don't own a tower, I'll indicate as such. Do what you will with that information. Finally, I'm not going to be comparing the stats of these towers flat across the games. That'd be just stupid, and if I did that, then due to the balancing of the games being different, then the Tower Defense X towers would dominate. Instead, I'll be ranking them based on their performances in their respective games, with one exception. I will be comparing their freeze times and methods to each other. That's something that is important as it is their defining trait. But things like DPS and damage and range and fire rate, that's all just fluff native to their own games. Finally, I am counting every single unit that has the ability to freeze or just use ice, not just ice-specific units. Oh, in games with two paths, the paths are being split into two separate towers to rank. There, I think that's about everything. So without further ado, let's get on to our contestants. From Tower Battles, we'll be ranking the Cryogunner, Sleeter, and Snowballer. From TDS, we have the Freezer, Frost Blaster, Sledger, Cryomancer, and Jester. From Tower Blitz, we have the Freezer, both paths, and Top Path Surveyor. From Tower Defense X, we have Cryo Blaster and Cryo Ranger. From World Tower Defense, we have Cryomancer, Verglazer, Glazier, and Snowman. From Doomspire Defense, we have Freezer and Lumi, the ice spell only. And from Tower Galactica, we have the Equinox, the ice crystal only. Anyways, now that we met our contestants, let's get to the ranking. Boom, here's the ranking. Confused? Angry? Just wait a sec. We're gonna go through this tier list from bottom to top and explain why each tower is where it is. But lightning fast, otherwise this video is gonna be like super long. Okay, let's start with the worst of the worst, which sadly comes from my GOAT Tower Galactica, Equinox. Yeah, when you strip away the other elements and the main attack, the ice crystal doesn't do all that much. The ice crystal creates a zone that has a lifetime of up to 6 seconds or something like that, and it slowly freezes an enemy down a little bit. It's not really all that useful, and even when you get the Frostburn combination, all it does is increase the burn damage. Not really a reliable freezer because, well, it doesn't freeze, and it's a random chance that you'll even get this out of the random 3 elemental crystals. Next is Sledger, who is the only tower to come from the TDS Ice update worse than it was before. Pre-update Sledger was probably the best ice tower, mainly because of his damage bonus to frozen enemies and the freeze time being extremely good. Now, however, his attacks apply chill, which, while this benefits the other ice towers, for a slow-hitting melee tower that needs enemies to be frozen to be effective, it just doesn't work. Sledger is terrible unless he has another ice tower to help him rack up the chill. Coupled with his slow swing rate and freeze rate, he is just a shell of his former self. Moving up from bottom tier, we have Lumi next, the Doomspire defense version, not the voxel version, which sadly I don't own one, and it's really expensive and I just don't want to get it. Sorry, voxel defense fans. Anyways, considering how good the tower cloner is in voxel, Lumi is just kinda done dirty. Lumi is an elementalist tower, but the issue is that her fire rate becomes slower as the levels progress, and she gains more spells, making her only one good spell, the ice spell, less common and less useful than it could be. At max level, her ice spell does a whopping 205 damage, and freezes an enemy for 10 seconds. That sounds pretty good, but when you realize that it has effectively a 9-second cooldown, and that it's a single target attack and not an AoE one, it becomes less good. It's useful in the sense of, if it's set to strong, you're able to take one enemy out of the fight for a pretty long time. But it's so expensive that by the time you get this super powerful ability to freeze, it's already time for a boss, or you can spend your 14 grand on something much more worth it. Also, while the 10-second freeze is great, 2 level 2 freezers in this game with max mastery can stall entire crowds of enemies, so yeah, it's outclassed. Really hope this gets a buff. I mean, for a tower that you go cross-game to get, it's not really worth it in my opinion, but whatever. Next is Top Path Freezer in Tower Blitz. This path trades freeze time for splash damage and, well, more damage. Unfortunately, it's not really the best at freezing in my experiences, also the tower limit, and also the lack of flying detection hinders this tower greatly. Not to mention, this path has no slowing to speak of, making it even less desirable. Never use this, just get Surveyor's Frost Drones instead. They do what this path does, but significantly better, and they can target flying enemies. Finally, we have Top Path Cryo Ranger, our first TDX tower. Cryo Ranger, for an ice tower, has really good DPS that would easily sweep a lot of these other towers on the list. However, this tower suffers from the freezing method, which is similar to chill in TDS, but takes longer, what leads to a permanent freeze. While the other towers can reach max chill easily, this path struggles as it prioritizes DPS. It's not the worst, but there are so many better options than what this has to offer. Moving on to the largest tier, we have these guys. I'm going to rapid fire as I don't really have too much to say about each. Cryogunner is surprisingly a really solid one, dealing good damage and good freeze time, which is incredible when paired with a splash tower like Tuber or multi-target like Plasma Trooper. Only weakness is slow fire and no hidden. Freezer Bottom Path TBZ is slightly better with a slowing effect, and it's the first Roblox ice tower to use the spray of ice. It's kind of the worst of the three, but hey, it's a cool ability. Cryomancer is the basic freeze unit you can get in World Tower Defense, and its freezing capabilities are pretty decent at the max levels. However, this tower is held back by the mechanics of the game, because this guy is extremely expensive to place down when he's maxed out. Not to mention that your money is kind of better spent on killing enemies rather than delaying the inevitable, seeing as Cryomancer does no damage at any level, and most bosses and mini-bosses have some sort of freeze immunity. His low health also doesn't help much, making him easy pickings for enemies. Surveyors, Frost Drones are just a better top path freezer, more damage in AoE and flying detection. Not really much else to say. Cryomancer TDS is good for the freezing it can do, but the damage and everything else is just okay. It's a good alternative to Pyro, but it doesn't really have a golden mode to compensate. It also is pretty expensive, and it can also slow down your own units for some reason, which is both a good and a bad thing. Jester's ice bombs can't freeze, but when spammed, they can really slow things down and allow your damage units to actually take down enemies. Even for solo Fallen, these guys can really make quick work of enemies like the tank, allowing things like Militant or Minigunner to just shred them. And people should really use this more because it's kind of slept on. Like, trust me guys, pair this with Confusion Bombs. It's amazing. Glazier is good for many things, but freezing isn't really one of them. He has no upgrades, but his stats increase over time. He can be really good by the end of a match, but if he dies, the tower's effectiveness dies with it. Very situational, but incredibly powerful. The basic freezer has burst fire, freezes well, has an ice grenade, and generally I think it's slept on by people. For an ice tower, it's really good, and while its hidden detection is expensive, it has it at least, which is more than can be said for many other towers on this list. Bottom Path Pyro Ranger, are you freaking kidding me? Bottom Path Cryo Ranger is kinda just a better freezer. It has 2 explosive ice attacks and does heavy burst freeze, actually being able to freeze its targets. It lacks hidden detection, but given how easily that's negated, it's not too big of a deal. This tower is pretty good. Moving up, this is where we are getting to these super good freezers. Frost Blaster is considered by many to be one of the best ice towers in TDS, and I can see why. It actually freezes and does piercing shots and high damage. It's an ice tower that you can actually rely on for a bit before it needs help, making it great overall. Snowballer is pretty trash for the first 3 levels, but levels 4 and 5 are actually really good single target freeze. These guys at max level can stall even boss 3s for multiple seconds, and in general they're just very strong. This tower also boasts some of the best freezing of any tower on this list, freezing enemies for up to 10 seconds while having splash and direct damage. Sure, no hidden detection and it can miss, but who cares? This tower can be devastating under the right circumstances. Snowman is just a crazy tower. She throws snowballs from a gun and also freezes with shots. While the freeze is good, it's not really all that reliable, and the system for it is just kind of old, so it's just really slow and misses. However, she also can create frost minions by filling up her ice meters, making her able to stall enemies, while her ice units approach to deliver the killing blow. She's a really interesting concept, only held back by factors outside of her control. Top Path Cryoblaster can halt entire crowds of lesser enemies, and is only down here because it really only plays second fiddle to Bottom Path, ensuring it's more successful. Also, it has no hidden detection unlike Bottom Path, so yeah. Now we move to the top 4, that are, in my opinion, the best ice towers on Roblox. In 4th place, we have Cryoblaster Bottom Path. He is incredibly high damage for an ice tower, dealing 100, and it's used to stun final bosses, basically. He's only held back by being super expensive and being single target, and requiring large numbers to effectively freeze bosses. But regardless, he's incredibly great at what he does, and the fact that he can freeze the 4 main bosses at all is just incredible. Sleeter is in 3rd place, being the first ice tower on Roblox to be burst fire. This guy can permanently slow down enemies by up to 20%, and this includes final bosses like the Void or the Grim. He also basically acts like an ice version of Toxic Gunner, being able to freeze in large bursts and eventually hipfires an ice machine gun. Incredibly powerful, incredibly useful, and he has hidden detection at the base level. What more could you want? At number 2, we have the Freezer from Doomspire Defense, which honestly might be worthy of first place due to how cheap it is. This tower can freeze entire crowds of enemies incredibly fast, and with surprising effectiveness. Think the Tower Battles Cryo, but on steroids. This guy's hidden detection, pierce, and a set of mastery upgrades that turn this tower into an unrivaled powerhouse. This is the only tower on this list that I regularly bring into matches because it is so strong and so useful. However, even with all the power it has, it's beaten by 1, in my opinion. Of course, the best ice tower is the Ice Warrior Gladiator Goddess thing, Verglazier. Verg is a melee/range tower hybrid that shoots icicles or attacks with her sword, dealing incredible freeze and damage. She also has like these 2 super form upgrades apparently that just freezes and kills everything from everything I've seen, and it's just an absolute monster. So there's just like no other more obvious first place S tier than this. So in conclusion, I think that ice towers have overall been getting more and more varied and useful, with them becoming more powerful over time, thanks to developers actually letting ice towers do the one thing that they were designed to do. As for the game who respects the ice towers the most, well, I'd have to give it to either TDS or TDX, who make their ice towers both affordable, not kind of a Robux thing, and actually useful across all modes in the game. If I'm going to pick a favorite though, it'd be the Doomspire Defense Freezer. Anyways, that's really all I got for this massive video. I hope you enjoyed. Comment down below your thoughts and be sure to like and subscribe as we're almost at 20k, and I'll see you guys all next time. Bye.